Mike Sagely has flown a Black Hawk military helicopter more than a dozen times along the Potomac here in Washington, and he's with us now from Palmdale, California. So, Mike, I understand when you learned about this accident, you said it blew your mind that these aircraft collided. Walk me through that.
Yeah, well, first I'd just like to put my heartfelt sadness for the families and the victims of this tragedy. Every time there's a aviation incident like this, a mishap, and especially when there's fatalities, the whole community feels it. We're connected professionally, and it's just a horrible event. And so, uh, yeah, I made that statement. I'd like to clarify that a little bit with some context to it when I said systems failure. Anytime there's a mishap like this or an accident, it's usually what we refer to as a chain of events. You break any one of the links in that chain, and hopefully the outcome is favorable and the accident doesn't occur. But in this particular instance, there's several factors in it. You have the human piece to it. You've got software, you've got hardware, you've got technologies that are available today. And it's a horrible feeling to realize that even with all of that in place, these types of things still happen. And unfortunately, the loss of life is the result of this. So.
No, it's terrible. Can you put us inside, if you will, the cockpit of a Black Hawk at night flying near this airport? I mean, what would they have been seeing? What are they doing? Who's looking out for other aircraft? What's it like in there?
Well, that is a dedicated helicopter route. It's used quite frequently for helicopters to transit past Reagan Airport there. And it's designed to try and do that with simultaneous operations of commercial aircraft, obviously. And the routing structure there runs along the far side of the river from the airport, and it has altitude restrictions on it as well. And then, of course, you're under ATC control. And anytime you throw the night in there, the level of risk, of course, increases for all aircraft for that matter. And in this instance, there's probably several things that allowed this to sort of develop into what it was or is. And, there's some, like, I'll give you a small example. At night, apparently they were flying with NVGs. And then here in California on the firefighting side, we wear them as well. And of course, they have certain limitations to them. They're a great tool. And we have the ability to flip them up and down on our helmet. And when I'm in an urban environment, for example, where there's a lot of backlighting and there's a lot of cultural lighting, I tend to flip them up and just use the naked eye. In this particular instance, it appears that they were wearing them, and as they probably should, I'm sure they were doing training. And there are certain situations where you have the ability to lose visual sight of an aircraft when it's sort of backdrop with cultural lighting. In other words, there's clutter. There's so much light and clutter that the aircraft that you're looking at blends in. And I'm not saying that happened in this particular instance, but it certainly is a possibility. Both aircraft there were obviously under ATC control. And we do that quite a bit here in LA, where we get visual confirmation of an aircraft, and they ask us to maneuver, appropriately around the aircraft. And so it's not uncommon. It's definitely not uncommon for helicopters and airplanes, similarly in this instance, to work in very close proximity to each other. And obviously, in this particular case, it seems like there was certainly a less than desirable outcome. Is that kind of?
Can I just clarify something that you're talking about with the night vision goggles? Because the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, had said today that in the Black Hawk they were wearing their night vision goggles. But it sounds like you're saying that you can flip them up, because sometimes there's so much light pollution down there, if you will, Is it just easier to just flip them up and just look with the naked eye?
Well, that depends. It depends on the conditions, and that's up to the pilots, obviously, to determine when they want to utilize that system to their benefit. It's a great enhancement at night, and there are certain limitations to it. And so the option is really the key to it. And I'm, I can only speak for how I utilize them now and versus how I utilize them in the military. Most of the time when you're doing military training, specifically night vision goggle training, you're going to wear those systems and for the purposes of training and proficiency. And in this particular instance, it sounds as though they were.
One last thought briefly. There's so many questions as to why the military would fly training flights so close to this busy airport. Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, the aircraft was based at Davidson, I believe, from what I've seen, and I would say that that's a very common practice. There's nothing unusual or abnormal about them utilizing that route and training for purposes of proficiency. So nothing out of the ordinary in this particular instance. I know it seems a little out of the ordinary, but the reality of it is it happens routinely.
Okay. Mike Sagely, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Fly well.
Thank you.